Hello, my name is Rob, and welcome back to Directors Uncut. We are a podcast that puts filmmakers from all corners of the globe onto a huge list that covers everything from 90s new queer cinema to 1930s screwball. Then we pick a name from a huge bank of directors to chat about their work through two films. To do so, I am joined by two guest hosts this week, and we'll be talking about something which I'm pretty sure is going to make me persona non grata in the podcasting community. But we'll get to that in due course, I think. It's following up from last week's episode. I'll just say that. And today I am joined by Gav. Hello there.
Hello again.
Hello again.
We need to make sure that today we keep on the paths, stay off the moors, and beware the moon.
There we go. And if you see a pub and there's Rick Mail there, I think it's best to jog on.
Absolutely.
And also Andy as well. Hello there.
Hello. I can't really follow that up because I don't know the other movie well enough to quote it. So I was going to try and follow up maybe with something from said movie. But I'm interested to know about what you've said that makes you persona non grata. But I'll be hearing that,
well,
I'm sure.
Last week I talked about my dislike of Bill Murray.
Ah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems that time has made me correct, as things usually do. That's a really smug way of putting it, but I'm staying with it.
Yeah.
Because the stories came out that he's not great, is he?
Yeah, it seems
apparently
like
not, but hey.
Especially as I think we'll kind of maybe come on to later, or maybe you've touched on this already as well. The Saturday Night Live crew can be a wee bit touchy. A touchy subject, yeah.
Absolutely. This is part 2. We're following up from 2 weeks gone, where we looked at John Landis. We touched on Thriller, but mainly we talked about here we go. Memory. Memory is a funny beast, isn't it?
It certainly is.
In the Night and
Into the Night.
Into the Night. There we go. It's because it's such an obscure movie, that one.
It was very obscure.
Yeah, and the other one was The Blues Brothers.
Another obscure movie. No one's heard of that.
Yeah.
I've never seen it. Still,
You've never seen it?
No. I've seen the show.
You are missing out.
Studios in Florida, but I've never seen the movie.
Wow.
Like I was too bitter after we didn't get to talk Animal House. Right? So
yeah, I mean, that'd have been a fun movie. I mean, let's just use that as an excuse, really. Usually at this point, I'd ask what your sort of experiences with John Landis, but that's kind of feeling a bit superfluous, really. So, any other movies from his filmography, excluding the two we're talking about today and the two talked about in the previous episode, that stand out to you in any way? I don't know.
Go on.
Andy, I want to talk about Animal House, so Animal House it up.
Yeah, so Animal House is one of those ones that I was introduced to by my dad at a young age, probably too young. I think it's maybe a 15, but at that age, ratings don't really mean much. So that would have been my first real experience of him, and I absolutely love Animal House. Now, it's been I'll rephrase that. The last time I watched Animal House, I loved it, and you're talking at least 5 years ago. I used to have it in DVD, and I don't know my DVDs anymore. But I just wonder, I don't know how well it's aged. So that would have been 1980, Animal House, maybe 78. Yeah. I can't remember the exact date.
Sort of like
really early doors.
Porky's era, yeah.
Aye. From what I remember, I don't remember anything as problematic as certain other parts in those kind of early 80s, late 70s comedies, but I could just be painting it in a better light. But that was probably the first time I've kind of really... Again, I wouldn't have known it was John Landis. I would have watched Animal House and National Lampoon's movies like... God, I can't even remember the name of another few that I watched.
There was a huge wave of them, wasn't there? In sort of like the early to mid 80s.
Yeah,
it was just super popular. Like it somehow made Chevy Chase a star, and I don't know how they did that to this day. It's witchcraft.
Absolutely.
And it's got John Belushi just being probably the finest. I think he's been, but again, I've not seen Blues Brothers, so I can't really comment on his finest performance in terms of that, but he's fantastic in it. And the kind of main good guy in it, again, I can't remember the actor's name, but he was in Van Wilder, National Lampoon's Van Wilder.
It's obviously not Ryan Reynolds, because I don't get just the Barbie.
He plays Van Wilder's dad, and he's the kind of quiffed guy in Animal House. He plays Van Wilder's dad, but I can't remember his name. I've totally lost me. And so I probably shouldn't have mentioned them because it's pointless mentioning them. But yeah, Animal House, absolutely love. Don't judge me if it's really, really bad in terms of...
Wow, yeah.
It's got issues, but I think any film from 1978 probably has got issues. So you probably,
Well, you're talking 45,
especially comedy. I mean, I have talked about it a lot, but like Porky's and those sort of movies where teenagers are trying to get laid, it's just the way they look at women. It's, you look at it now and you think, wow, the 70s sure was a long time ago, wasn't it?
Sure was.
You could even still say it with things like American Pie in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Weren't exactly forward thinking in their views. But again, that's American Pie is another one, but like, I could go into another 5 minutes talk about that.
It's not as bad as the sequels, I'll say that much.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Gav, any other John Landis that stands out for you?
It's Three Amigos, which is an amazing film. It's Steve Martin in that. Chevy Chase is in it, admittedly, but we can allow it this time. I mean, that's just brilliant. It's just got some great lines and great set pieces. Martin Short and Steve Martin.
I'm not even familiar with that one, I'll be honest. I know the poster. I can picture the poster. Well, that's about it doesn't give you.
It's about Three Amigos. They're three mariachi singers, and they're on a TV show.
Okay.
And on the TV show, they kind of like, they're like the A-Team, but they're singers. And they get their failing career, they get a letter from a Mexican city saying, come and save our city. So they think it's actually a gig. So they go down there and actually they're signed up to save the city, and it kind of spirals from there.
So it's what's it called now? I always forget what it's called. And I really shouldn't have brought it up when I can't remember the name of it. But, Galaxy Quest has an element of Galaxy Quest to it.
Yeah, I guess, but set in the Wild West, and it plays in a lot of Wild West themes, and obviously the heroes that can't possibly be heroes because they're just actors and all that type of thing. It's a good one. Obviously, that's got Chevy Chase in it. The previous film that Landis had done with Chevy Chase was Spies Like Us, which has got Dan Aykroyd in it. We could talk about tonight.
Yeah.
And then next film after Three Amigos, he did Coming to America with Eddie Murphy. So, there's this run of films in his career that were just the same people, but they were big movies at the time. I mean, Spies Like Us, Three Amigos, and Coming to America.
I think made over £1 billion, I think.
Massive box office. Yeah,
successful.
Yeah. Just having a check there, he's also done a lot with Michael Jackson.
Don't talk about that.
No.
Well, Thriller's an absolutely standout music video. We talked about that last time, but I don't know what name. I mean, the idea of knowing who directs a music video, I just find really weird. It's not something to think about. It
just seems something that you would do as a kind of job for hire guy more than someone a Landis.
I think he became friendly with Michael Jackson,
right?
And because he became friendly with him, and I think it was because Michael Jackson was a big fan of Werewolf that he went, I'd like you to do a film for me that's going to be in the same type of vein. So it worked from there.
Okay, so that brings us to the two movies we're going to be talking about tonight. It is 1981's landmark movie, American Werewolf in London, and I've got the wrong tab open, but it should be Trading Places, which isn't 1988. It's 83, so much closer together. Both star Eddie Murphy, though, so...
Yes. I don't think they do.
American
Werewolf London hasn't got Eddie Murphy in it.
Oh, no. I mean, Twin Places and Coming to America. They're both Eddie Murphy vehicles. I don't know whether they'd be classed as vehicles then. I don't know how big his star was.
Twin Places, it was to make him a star.
Quite young in it.
By Coming to America, he'd already done Beverly Hills Cop, so he was there.
That was the real star-making Eddie Murphy vehicle.
Twin Places, I think, followed 48 Hours, which was
that was another big
serious
one
role for him. So Train Places was a show he had comedy as well. Because he was a comedian. He'd done stand-up for years, and it was to say, I'm a comedy actor rather than a serious actor, so let's do that instead.
Yeah, let's be fair. He's a poor man's Richard Pryor, and let's just move on.
So that's Train Places covered. Let's...
Can I have a piece of toast?
Get the fuck out of here, Jack.
Thanks a lot.
No, I can't take this. Am I asleep now, awake, or what?
I realize I don't look so hot, David. But I thought you'd be glad to see me. David, you're hurting my feelings.
Hurting your feelings? Has it occurred to you that it might be unsettling to see you rise from the grave to visit me?
Sorry to be upsetting you, David, but I had to come.
Aren't you supposed to be buried someplace in New York?
Yeah. Your parents came to my funeral. I was surprised at how many people came.
Now, why should you be surprised? You were a very well-liked person.
Yeah, I was, wasn't I?
Well, I liked you.
Debbie Klein cried a lot.
Oh, God. Am I asleep now or what?
So, you know what she does? She's so grief-stricken. She runs to find solace in Mark Levine's bed.
Mark Levine?
An asshole. Life mocks me even in death.
I'm going completely crazy.
David!
What?
Now, I'm really sorry to be upsetting you, but I have to warn you.
Warn me?
We were attacked by a werewolf.
I'm not listening to this.
On the moors, we were attacked by a lycanthrope, a werewolf. I was murdered, an unnatural death. And now I walk the earth in limbo until the werewolf's curse is lifted.
Shut up.
The wolf's bloodline must be severed. The last remaining werewolf must be destroyed. It's you, David.
What?
Please believe me. You'll kill people.
Nurse!
Listen to me!
Nurse!
The supernatural, the power of darkness, it's all true. The undead surround me. Have you ever talked to a corpse? It's boring. I'm lonely. Take your life, David. Kill yourself before you kill others. Please don't cry. Beware the moon, David.
So we'll do it chronologically. So that means American Werewolf in London would be the first of the two, and I think I have to ask one person the synopsis for this because they've said it's one of their favourite movies. So Gav, what is American Werewolf in London about?
Right, it is. This is my favourite horror film. Also has been. Basically, two American tourists on a trip around Europe find themselves in Yorkshire. God knows why. But that's where they find themselves. On passing by a local pub, the Slaughtered Lamb, there should have been a little clue there for them. They're advised to stay off the moors, beware the moon, by a very helpful Brian Glover. And they find themselves then on the moors, in the middle of the moors, and are attacked by a beast of some sort. After which David, the survivor of the two Americans, is flown bizarrely to London, because that's where you would go if you were attacked on the Yorkshire moors. The nearest hospital to Yorkshire, as we all know, is in London.
Because, an American doesn't understand England, does he?
In London, he finds that obviously the beast that attacked him was a werewolf, and he turns at the next full moon into a werewolf. The story then continues with him killing shagging, and eventually killing himself, or being killed in order to get rid of the werewolf curse.
Absolutely.
Typical werewolf fodder, basically.
And I don't think it's typical, but we'll get to why I think that in a minute. But Andy, what do you think of American Werewolf?
I am a big fan of it, and it is not one that I regularly rewatch, to be honest. Again, we kind of touched on my kind of early introduction to Landis with Animal House, and again, Werewolf was one that I think my dad probably introduced me, even though he's not a massive horror guy. I think it was just one of those quintessential massive movies from the 80s, where he would have been the prime age for it when it came out. It's a movie that I was late to, very late to. Like, I would have been probably in my late 20s before I think I seen it for the first time. Yeah, and I do love it. Like, it's not one that I always go back to, but I'm kind of one of these guys that goes back to movies that, even if they were a bit shit, if I watched them when I was younger, I'll still watch them again. Matrix Revolutions. And so because I kind of discovered this later in life, I don't go back to it. But I mean, it's just a masterpiece in, I think, practical gore, practical effects, tight storytelling. What is now certainly more kind of a trope of what's the word to describe it? The kind of harbinger of doom type thing that you get 10 a penny in certain movies nowadays, and it just stands up incredibly well.
Yes, I like it,
right?
But I've mellowed on it a lot over the years. I'll be honest. I don't know what I mean. There's great things about it, but we'll get to. But for me, I think it's the way it's held up as sort of one of the all-time great comedy horrors. And for me, one of the things that sort of consistently falls down with any sort of John Landis product is they're never funny.
He has a strange relationship with comedy, I think, always. But there is a dark comedy in this, and there's a heart behind it, and there's actually a story that holds together. I mean, if you think about the films we were talking about last time, Into the Night, there's no real story in that at all that goes in one direction at the same time. And even Blues Brothers is just an excuse to have lots of people singing. But this considering where it is in sort of his filmography, it's only about his fourth or fifth film that he made. It's a really good entry into his films. It's got a proper story. It's got a proper heart to it. There are some lovely comedy moments. Even if you think it's not funny, there are some comedy moments that make you...
Well, it's not funny in the way where I'll laugh.
No, it's very...
That's a horrible way.
It's very black. I mean, it's very dark, the comedy, and the fact that someone's being killed out in the field and the guy pops out the window and goes, "The vandals are back in the park, darling." It's like... It's not funny, but it's funny.
No.
Yeah. I kind of, that's my one aspect that I don't really kind of go with it. Like, for me, comedy horror or horror comedy, where there's a difference between the way you would word and describe it, I think immediately something like Shaun of the Dead or Hot Fuzz, which have laugh out loud moments, and even Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which is I would say that's comedy horror instead of horror comedy, if you get what I mean. And so for this, I'm maybe leaning a wee bit more towards Rob. I don't particularly find it funny, and I don't find there's certain Gav, as you're saying, there's certain kind of moments in it that are like, the vandals are back again. You're sitting kind of just laughing at the guy going, "Oh, you're fine," kind of thing, knowing what's coming. Yeah. But the kind of comedy side of it, I think, is probably the weakest part of it for me overall.
I don't know if was it ever actually sold as a comedy. I mean, I know that
it's kind of posthumously, wasn't it? Yeah.
I mean, I think Landis wants to be a comedy director, which, you look through his films, he's done a lot of comedy stuff, and up to this point, he'd only done comedy stuff. So he wants to have something in there that's a bit funny. And if it is just a couple of throwaway lines, that's what it is, a couple of throwaway lines. I mean, I personally think it's one of the great werewolf films of all time. It reinvented the werewolf. It's the first time we've got a werewolf on all fours instead of a man walking around with his trousers on and just a bit of hair. You've got that amazing transformation scene that Rick Baker's done to, transforming into wolf. And it's a good, what is it, about 8-10 minutes of transformation that he has, turning into a wolf, where you hear the bones crack, the fingers extend. It's mental.
It was just sort of cut away, and then it's just sort of a hairy Geordie on a night out, because the gag there, international listeners, is Geordies a night out, they always have the shirts off. Yeah. Always.
And they're all hairy.
Yeah, and those movies are just that, basically. And a Geordie is somebody from Newcastle. I'm explaining jokes, which makes them really funny, doesn't it?
Adds to the comedy. This is what you would call a comedy discussion, or a discussion comedy. I'm not too sure. Yeah.
But that sequence, it's very long, maybe too long, but you can't discount the fact that it is outstanding, and it made like a transformation look really painful.
Yeah. Especially when you consider that this is before any CGI or anything like this. This is all practical.
Latex and rubber and all sorts of things. I don't know the ins and outs. I'm not Dan Martin. I don't know all the sort of,
there's some simple stuff in it, really simple stuff. The hair growing out, that film reversed. They had the hair through the latex, they pulled it backwards, and then they've reversed it so it looks like the hair's coming out. So
it's such a basic
simple stuff like that, but it's quite incredible.
It's obviously like a master of physical effects, but I think editing as well adds to the way it's edited. Like, it could have been, if it had been kind of shoddily cut, it wouldn't have had the same effect either. And just it's all working really well together in that scene.
Yeah, there's how would I put it? Let's just talk about the werewolf, I think, in this. Like, how it uses the werewolf, because I think it, as well as it being revolutionary, it also hasn't really been repeated. There's so many things in this which it established sort of like a new mythology for werewolves. Like the idea that whoever had been bitten by a certain werewolf or turned by a certain werewolf would stay as a ghost and haunt that person until they died. Little bits like that. It takes some bold swings, and I don't think I've seen them in any sort of werewolf adjacent thing since.
It was introducing sort of zombies almost to the werewolf mythology. I know they're not, because they're not. Nobody else can see them. They don't exist. They're ghosts. But the fact that these corpses that are appearing are rotting alongside them, they're not. People don't stay as they were. They stay how they were when they attack, after their attacks, and then they start to rot as well. I mean, the effects on his mate get fairly gruesome or worse as they go through.
Yeah, Griffin Dunne.
His final time he pops up, he's not even there, is he? It's a puppet of a skull that's just got bits of sinew still hanging off it. So it's
try to think about the other werewolf movies I've seen, and I mean, you're talking Wolf, Dog Soldiers, Werewolves Within. There's nothing really that is, as you're saying, Rob, there's nothing similar to that style. It's very unique in that kind of take on it, and the afterlife style of it.
It's surprising, really, considering how influential it is.
Well, I don't think you'd have things like Dog Soldiers, certainly, where all the wolves are on all fours, without.
I don't think there'd be such a thing as the werewolf movie without it, honestly, because, I mean, I'm a bigger fan of The Howling.
I knew that.
But that's like tomato, it doesn't really matter. They're both good movies, but without American Werewolf, it basically is the werewolf movie. That's the one that everything else is held up to.
Yeah.
And yet for it to influence none of them in the sort of the mechanics of how the werewolves work, I've always found that really weird, I'll be honest.
It is. It's a bit strange, because the mythology they create around it follows in from, I guess, the monster movies of Universal, in that, you get bitten by a werewolf, you turn into a werewolf, and it's based on the moon and silver bullets to kill you, all that type of thing is the same. But they added the new element of you actually turn into a wolf. Not a wolf man, you turn into a wolf. And this weird thing of your victims come back to haunt you, and anyone who happened to be killed at the same time as you come back as well, which is a strange thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it almost kind of it adds to the curse aspect, doesn't it? It's more of a kind of link to that than just the kind of basic concept of you get bit and you are the next in line. It adds to the curse is kind of increased sort of tenfold by this element of it.
Yeah, the curse isn't just on the werewolf, it's on all his victims. All his victims are now having to stay around in the living world, rotting away and wanting him to, as they keep saying, kill yourself, David. So,
yeah. And the makeup is outstanding, I'll be honest. One thing I will say about that sequence is it kind of comes out of nowhere, really, doesn't it?
Which...
He's just watching TV, and then he turns into a werewolf. What happens there? I'm not quite sure.
The moon comes out. It's all affected by the full moon. I'm sure it does not cut the full moon just before he's watching telly, and then you see the moon, and then it goes back to him.
Yeah, he's just screaming in pain.
Yeah, gets very hot.
Yeah,
it's like I'm trying to think of any other werewolf transformations that really have that effect, that show the pain that people go through. Again, it's not something. It's quite instantaneous, or they'll just rip their skin off.
Yeah.
Almost.
The howling, the original howling, is the only sort of alternative where that like the skin bubbles and pops and stretches.
Yeah,
but
even game I played recently, The Quarry, they just kind of the skin bursts, and that's the change, and that's kind of it. Like there's just like an instant pop, and
because this was the thing that made that an idea, wasn't it? Like the whole reason why anybody watches a werewolf movie is go on and let's see your transformation. Let's see what's going on here.
Can you do the same as Landis had done?
It's a bit reductive, but at the same time, it's just inspired an entire genre, really.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. One thing I really like about this, it's part of my favourite subgenre, which is Americans don't understand England. or Scotland in the case of Under the Skin, where, Scarlett Johansson comes to Scotland and he just doesn't get it. This was the first one, so we'll talk about this. But that's funny to me, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's that sort of culture clash, isn't it? We're always thought of sort of the 50 whatever state, and we're just so very, very different. And we get these two very, very American boys who go to Yorkshire because it's God's county, damn it. and this weird pub. I mean, it may as well have said the Red Lion outside. It was that much of a red flag. And there's another English gag for you that I'm not explaining. Okay, I'll explain.
No, don't. Just leave it.
I don't get Red Lions. Is that a thing?
It's basically the most popular pub name in England, and if you want to go to a town pub which has all of the racists, go to a pub called the Red Lion.
Pretty much.
We have a Red Lion in Glasgow. Assume not.
I should hope not.
I mean, we have plenty of racist places, but certainly not a Red Lion.
Spread her out more liberally. But yeah, they go, it's that idea they go to a pub in the middle of nowhere in the moors. Yeah. And it's just that sort of Western archetype, isn't it? Of going into a pub and all the locals look at them.
Sound goes off.
It's full of that. It's full of all that sort of Americans don't get the UK. And I think it's just absolutely delightful, honestly.
Yeah. In fact, I was just had another thought of another one, Wolf Manor, which I've watched recently, and that has the exact similar type of trope again of the suspicious locals who don't want to tell you where to go. And it works great in this, especially with the background of the pissing down rain.
Yeah.
It's just a perfect setup. That pub feels cold as well. Like it's like I think a stereotype for Americans coming over to the UK and going to a pub like that would be you get out the cold, you get in with a warm fire, pie and chips, shit like that. And this is just, you walk in there and you feel like you can probably hear a leaky pipe and your pint's going to be cloudy and it's just going to be horrible in general. Like, it just looks like a proper shite hole.
Yeah.
It is, absolutely. What else is there about American Werewolf? It's such a rich movie, I think. But it's...
Yeah, I mean, it is. There's lots goes on. I mean, you've got your cameos. You've obviously got Rick Mail in there.
Oh, he was just a baby in this,
Yeah.
wasn't he? He must have been really young.
There's a story behind it, as there is with everything. He was playing in London the night before with Ade Edmondson doing their Dangerous Brothers, because that's what they were doing at the time. Landis saw them.
I haven't even heard of that.
Well, Landis saw them and just said, do you want the two of you want to be in a film? You're really funny. Ade Edmondson just got drunk and decided not to turn up. Rick Mail turned up Yorkshire the next day, and that's it. He was in the film.
That, you see, that's not how I'd picture that. I'd always assumed that Rick Mail was the more drunk of the two.
No, I think Ade's definitely was the one that was drinking at that time a lot more. But yeah, he apparently just didn't believe this guy was a director, because how can this guy be a director? So I will not turn up. And Rick did turn up, and there he goes. He's in it. So
immortalised as a 17-year-old or something, because he does look very young in this. He looks out of place in this pub as well. And there's all sorts of things established in this pub, like is it a pentagram? Yes. I can't remember. Like
pentagram on the wall,
drawn on the wall.
Yeah.
Which is just such a weird little detail as well. It's all world building, I think.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have a world to build into, because as we all know, American Werewolf in Paris doesn't exist.
Never seen it, thankfully. I never will watch it because I value my time.
Don't ever watch it.
You've not just said I watched Matrix Revolutions.
If you get the chance to watch it, don't at all.
Yeah. Kind of up there with like American Escape from LA and things like that, isn't it? Like the sequels that shouldn't have been made.
Yeah.
Is there anything else about American Werewolf that either you'd like to bring up, though, before we move on?
You were saying about the pub being cold. It's because it's not a pub. It was some cottage they found just sitting somewhere in the middle of nowhere. So it's...
Well, that's basically what those pubs are in those like towns where it's like 3 houses, a post office and a pub.
The interior is then somewhere completely different. So the interior was filled somewhere else and the cottage was the outside of it. But I mean, the thing you got to bring up was the whole dream sequence stuff between sort of Yorkshire Moors and then up here in London. We have all those wonderful dream sequences that I don't know. I think they were just Landis going, what can I do that's going to be a bit different? Because there's no need for them at all, but they're brilliant. The Nazi wolf things that attack the dinner table is just, it's an unbelievable scene.
Scarred generations of people. It's not prisoners.
What is the reason behind the kind of Nazi werewolves? Why is it Nazis? Is it just is like his family aren't meant to be Jewish in it? Are they? Are they Jewish? Is that a link with it?
I don't think that's.
It just seems like maybe there'd be a reason, like, but just as totally random. 2 really bad things, Nazis and werewolves. But yeah,
I don't think it's explicitly said anywhere that they are Jewish, but maybe they are.
One really cool thing and Nazis. just be straight.
Well, no, I said bad things. 2 bad things, werewolves, Nazis. I never said Nazis were cool.
I'm not going to address that. I'm just going to move on.
Only issue, I think, my main issue with, I feel at the end feels a little bit rushed. I could have done a wee bit longer.
Abrupt,
abrupt. Yeah, not rushed, but abrupt. Almost like, but I mean, would I rather that, or they had then continued on after for a little bit? I don't know, but it just feels very, right, here we go, we've got an ending, we need to stop now.
But at the same time, one thing I've noticed through watching these movies from John Landis is he does not know how to get to the point. His movies are long, really long movies. And this is about 90 minutes.
Yeah, something like that. It is. Yeah, it's just over an hour and a half, isn't it? Yeah, so
it really gets to the point. I mean, it is abrupt, and the ending just kind of comes out of nowhere. But it's a great ending, and I appreciate the fact that it just gets to the point, honestly.
Yeah. It does.
because the ending is weird, and it's such a ambitious ending as well. There's the porno theatre, the transformation in the porno theatre, and he just absolutely wreaks havoc in sort of very, very central London, which obviously it's some sort of substitute. I'm not going to delve into sort of the mechanics.
No, they closed a square in London. It was a closed set. It was proper street. It is proper street.
Yeah,
yeah,
really.
The porno theatre wasn't a porno theatre at the time. It was I think it was a show club. So it was like girls club. It wasn't a theatre, but it's a real place. It's still there now. I think it's a cinema now.
I was amazed when I found out that porno theatres were actually a real thing. I found one when I got lost in Birmingham before.
You didn't grin, did you?
You found one when you get lost in Birmingham?
Yeah. I'm winking to the camera.
I was lost in Birmingham, yeah.
Was this before Google Maps,
yes.
And obviously the porno theatre brings us back to the second use of See You Next Wednesday as a porn film in a Landis film. Because obviously it was the porn film in Kentucky Fried Movie, and now See You Next Wednesday gets appearing as a porn film again in the porn theatre.
Yeah, but that ending, I think it's just, as a spectacle, it's really, really impressive.
It is.
They really do hold nothing back there. It's a little bit weird the way the police are effective. I will say that.
Apart from one whose head thunks on the bonnets of the cars, because that's not very effective.
Oh, no, when they sort of like narrow it down into a alley.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just really bad policing where they have a nurse. I mean, an entire generation, I assume, fell in love with Jenny Agutter off the back of this.
Would have thought so, yeah.
Just the police, okay, you can talk to this wild rabid animal for a minute. That's absolutely fine. We can see nothing potentially going wrong here.
Which, is that not just harking back to the Universal Horrors Wolfman stories where, the wolf has fallen in love with the woman, or that the man who is the wolf has fallen in love with the woman. The woman's trying to get him back from being a beast, and they use the same trope there. And
it's a trope, but it's just...
the ending is typical of werewolf movies that came before this, where the end is, we kill the wolf. And that's it. End of story. The curse is broken, it's lifted, everyone's okay. Except for the guy who happened to be turning into a wolf.
Yeah.
And the guy got his head lopped off.
And the poor wolf that he slept with in the zoo.
Do we know for sure he slept with a wolf in the zoo?
Well, it's implied quite heavily, I think.
It was longing looks that, from one of the wolves. The police are also very, very sure of their aim at the end there, because Jenny Agutter standing right in the way. It's like, she'll be all right. It'll be fine. Nothing will ricochet off a bin.
It's a really narrow alley, but it'll be okay.
She looks good, doesn't she? Yeah, fuck it, go for it.
I think it's another one of those things in film where sometimes it's best not to think about it. The fact that a nurse has been allowed to take the patient home for recuperation, that's a bit dodgy in itself. The fact that they flew him to London from the Yorkshire Moors when he was attacked, that's a bit dodgy.
There's like Sheffield and Leeds around there, so easily, and York. They've got all got hospitals, amazingly.
I know, but I guess An American Werewolf and Leeds wouldn't quite have the same ring to it, would it?
Well, no. It plays into that whole idea, doesn't it? How Americans think that all of the UK is London.
Yeah, and I guess that's why they did it. And also, of course, it then led them up to having a sequel in another capital from another European city.
I don't know the mechanics or the history of that sequel, but it's not a John Landis movie, so I'm assuming it was just a studio-owned property, which they wanted to cash in on the success of, because that wasn't until the 90s or early.
It was a long time afterwards. The basic story is that David has a child with Jenny Agutter's character. They then move to Paris when they work out that the child is actually a werewolf. And the curse continues in Paris. So the werewolf in there is actually not an American werewolf, but an English-American werewolf in Paris.
That's it. They did the same with The Fly, didn't they? David Cronenberg's The Fly. They had Fly 2 and probably Fly 3, Son of Fly. it's the lazy way out of these sort of conclusively ending horror movies.
The problem with it was they were messing with CGI at the time. It's very early CGI, and all the wolves in it are CGI. The transformation scenes CGI. It's not good. Not good.
Yeah. Anything that you'd like to bring up about it, Andy?
No, I think we've kind of touched on the main points. Yeah, the Nazi werewolf bit's probably the highlight for me. The transformation still holds up. Yeah, it's just a great movie.
The Howling's still a better transformation. I'll die on that hill. I know I'm fighting against the tide here, but I will die on that hill.
Each to their own.
I'm not going to argue with you because you're wrong. There's no point in arguing with you.
Well, there is no definitive right answer. I mean, those two are, I think, heads in a way, the best werewolf transformations ever. I'd say Company of Wolves is a very, very different style of transformation because it's got sort of the snout pointing through somebody's mouth and sort of transforming that way, which I think is really cool. But
what about Hugh Jackman and Van Helsing?
Oh, come on, behave.
I'm just throwing something in there.
We've had some complaints about con men pretending to be blind and crippled.
Oh, I'd love to help you, man, but I ain't seen nothing since I stepped on that landmine in Viet Cong back in '72. It was rough, very painful.
You were in Nam? So were we. Where?
I was in Sang Bang, Dangang. I was all over that place, basically, a lot of places.
What unit were you in?
I was with the Green Beret, Special Unit Battalion's Commando Airborne Tactics, Specialist Tactics Unit Battalion. Yeah, it was real hush-hush. I was Agent Orange, that was my name, Agent Orange, Special Agent Orange, that was me.
Airborne, huh?
I can see! I have legs! Oh, shit, look at this! Man, I can walk! Jesus! Praise Jesus! I appreciate this. Oh, this is beautiful. I can't believe. Thank you. I just don't know what to do. Glory be to God. Praise Jesus. Look at me. This is too much. I can't believe it. I am beautiful. I can't thank you first. Moses, now this. God, Jesus. Oh, thank you. Look at me. What? I'm so happy. Oh, God. Look at me.
So that leads us to the second film, 1983's Trading Places. Andy, you want to take a swing at the synopsis for this one?
Yeah, I can do. So two brothers essentially set up a bet with each other that they can turn a guy who's down on his luck into a wealthy investor, and turn a wealthy investor into a guy who's down on his luck. Eddie Murphy's character is down on his luck. He's the con man. They want to turn him into they want to turn the con man into an investor, and the kind of Wall Street investor guy into a homeless, downtrodden schmo. The schmo, is that right? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's basically it. Rich guy into a poor guy into a rich guy.
Yeah. And all the hilarity that ensues with that. It's a really frustrating movie because I hate the two brothers that are in it, which you're meant to do.
And the Dukes, I think.
Yeah, the Dukes, that's what they're called. There's such a prominent part in it. I hated them so much. I've had my Tory rant off screen, so I'll just leave it at that.
They are totally Tory donors, though. That's all we'll say on air, on mic.
They. I mean, they're Rupert Murdoch, but maybe less evil. And that is what happens to Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd as they're going through this kind of changing fortunes, culminating in some questionable a questionable set piece near the end that turns out on its head.
A questionable set piece that I think everybody who's ever seen it forgets is in it until they watch it again. You thought, wow, this is there. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm terrible at synopsizing. movies, so that's probably as good as you'll get from me. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. Gav, what do you think of Trading Places?
At its time, or of its time, it's a classic comedy. When it's basically it's Prince and the Pauper, isn't it? With elements of Pygmalion stuck in there for good measure. It's about a guy who's down in his luck, who gets swapped round to become a rich guy for a $1 bet. It's got some really funny moments in it. It's a funny film. It's showing that, I suppose, it is the film that made Eddie Murphy into a comedy star. He was already doing stand-up. Yes. This was his big break in a comedy film. And it uses that comedy there. And also then reuses Dan Aykroyd, proving that he could do comic acting as well. And brilliantly uses Jamie Lee Curtis in the mix just to mess things up in a role that...
Well, she's her and Denham Elliott, who plays the butler, are the standouts in this, I think.
Yeah.
Very much so.
But just sort of following up from last episode where I sort of highlighted that I don't really like Dan Aykroyd. I swear it's not just a thing against ex-members of Ghostbusters. I have no problem with the other two.
All right, so it's just those two Ghostbusters.
Yeah, absolutely fine. It's just
Bill and Dan.
Just Bill and Dan, yeah, don't like them. I think with Dan Aykroyd, though, I don't know, it's just, there's something about him where I never really buy him in any role he's ever been in. He's a little bit too wink at the camera, if you know what I mean. He's a little bit too sort of proto. I know it's much worse now, but the sort of characters that Ryan Reynolds plays where he's very, very snarky. This is sort of like his sort of roles are all sort of like crude proto versions of that, and I just really don't like him, honestly.
I think it comes from his television background, doesn't it? You know, Saturday Night Live was where he started off, and he did all the stuff with them. He was really well known in America from that point of view. So,
yeah, if he was better at it, I don't want to have a problem. But he's just not. He's pretty bad at everything.
I think it's the script never called for him to be doing what he was then doing. So he was ad-libbing his winks to the camera places that didn't need it. Yeah. So that's why it doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean, I love him in Ghostbusters, the first one especially, but in this, I mean, he plays an insufferable guy who doesn't really learn his lesson.
Not in the slightest.
No. It's not, there's no like understanding of the situation he's been in and having a newfound respect for the man on the street. It's not really about that. It's about making sure the rich stay rich. Apart from the two dukes are the only two that really kind of miss out in this, and he is massively insufferable in it. But I mean, he's meant to be. I don't think there's a redeeming. I don't really think there's a redeeming person in the whole movie. Maybe Jamie Lee Curtis, but because she's Jamie Lee Curtis and she's really good. Not necessarily that her character's great. I
mean, in this, she's more famous for taking her top off than her actual character.
Yeah. I mean, she's really good in it, though. The butler as well he's someone else that doesn't really learn. He totally comes in on the bet with the Dukes, and he signs up for it and is happy to carry it on until really the last possible moment where Winthrop is close to death. Like, he's really willing to take it as far as it'll go until Eddie Murphy takes the high ground to an extent.
Oh yeah, I mean, even Eddie Murphy's character doesn't really learn anything, does he? I mean, he starts off as a rich guy, now he's not as a poor guy, sorry, who's like doing sort of very, very Eddie Murphy things, like he's pretending to be a Vietnam vet, he's had his legs blown off and he's blind, and he's, playing it up like his characters usually do, which is fine, when it works. I think it really works in sort of what's that movie called? We'll mention it earlier. No, Beverly Hills Cop. It really works in Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah,
and it works here too. But the character just doesn't learn. He just, instead of being poor, he's now rich, and that's it.
Yeah, and essentially the last act is a big con. Like, it's the worst of both worlds is how the movie ends. And obviously it ends with some stock thing happening. I totally went over my head what they were doing, so I googled it.
It was mine as well, yeah.
And, I Googled what they done. Still didn't understand it, but apparently they made 230 million in today's money.
Really?
What they done there? Yeah. Because like 80,000, I think Eddie Murphy's salary is 80,000, which works out about 260,000 in today's money.
Wow.
I think pennies compared to what those people are playing now.
Yeah.
Oh, aye. Yeah, definitely. But they essentially win. They essentially make 230 million off a shot selling or something. But then it kind of then cuts again as we're talking about the butler. The butler is part of their clique now, and now he's stinking rich, and he's just ordering someone else about on this private island or something. They're just horrible people.
It's like a weird moral. I mean, that's the 80s, though, isn't it? That was the decade where greed is good.
But I mean,
and this is playing into all that sort of mythology and ideology, isn't it?
It's all. I mean, the ending of it, it's revenge, isn't it? Because the two guys that made the original bet end up being on the streets and down and out. So they just turned it around to go, you've done this to us. Now we're going to do exactly the same to you, but we're going to be rich. But nobody learns anything. It's just a revenge thing that they plot this way of getting rid of those two guys and making themselves rich. So, I think it's probably it's not really Landis's fault, that one. I think it's badly written more than anything else. You take
it's quite unclear,
take something classic like Prince and the Pauper and try and rewrite it in a modern day setting, and it's never really going to work properly, I suppose. Sometimes you hit every mark and it'll work perfectly, and other times it doesn't.
Yeah, I think this is, at the end of the day, this is primarily a vehicle for Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd. And there was a lot, I mean, even to this day, there's that rife of the comedy world. I mean, Will Ferrell wouldn't have a career if it was on the basis of his acting and his ability. It's just they're all vehicles for his terrible work.
Yes. I'm not going to mention anything about him. Your feelings of Bill Murray, mine's Will Ferrell.
He has some good movies, but he has way more bad ones.
Could you mention any of his good movies now? Because I can't think of a single one.
Anchorman, Step Brothers.
That's it about Anchorman and Step Brothers.
No,
I think
they weren't funny. If you mention Elf, I'll kill you.
No, I'd never mention Elf.
What about Elf? I love
never
Elf.
mention.
The other guys is okay. I quite like the other guys, but more for how dumb Matt Wahlberg is it, and it is in it. Well, people don't play no shit.
I think with this movie, we've talked about it and we hinted at it, but we have to kind of tackle it, really, don't we? It's the plan. The plan. This is such a weird era looking back at it. We're in an era where, equality is really championed, and we're in a great sort of spot for talking about people's rights. And then you go back to the 80s and they have comedy racism.
Yeah, the whole plan is essentially the four of them being racist. The four agonists, if you will, like the Dan Aykroyd goes, the blackface.
Yeah, I mean, Denham Elliott comes in and he pretends to be Irish. I mean, I don't think he's heard an Irish person before. It's not a good Irish accent.
He's an Irish priest who drinks a lot.
Yeah. I wonder. Eddie Murphy is, I think, a Cameroonian prince.
Yep.
I'm sure he did his research there and knows all about Cameroonian culture. Absolutely. I bet he does.
As he probably did for coming in America a little bit later,
yeah. Even Jamie Lee Curtis's character.
Jamie Lee Curtis is Swedish.
Something like that, yeah.
She says she's Swedish, but she's clearly Swiss or Austrian.
She's dropping in all sorts of German terminology. You take a weird sort of thing. And then you think, it's just sort of it's not bad racism. It's sort of under the belly racism, the sort of insidious racism that nobody really feels the sort of shout out about because it's so petty. And then Dan Aykroyd walks in.
As a Rasta.
Yeah.
With blackface and dreadlocks on. And
a massive joint.
Yeah.
Don't forget the massive joint.
See, stop the press. That's... Wow. I've seen this a few times, and I think every time I've watched it, I just sort of scrub that from my memory.
Possibly, but in 83, it was perfectly acceptable. Nobody questioned it. It was there.
Oh yeah, it was.
It was. I mean, 86, Soul Man came out, which is about a white guy who turns himself black to get into college. You know, it
is that what that's about? Oh my word! I didn't know that.
He basically takes tablets to change the colour of his skin in order to get into college on a scholarship that you can only get if you're black. So, you know, that's 3 years later.
The 80s,
The 80s was very, very different times. You know, as someone who I'm a lot older than you guys, and I grew up in the 80s, and things like that were on television all the time. It was perfectly normal to see this type of thing. Now, the black and white minstrels weren't off the television long in the 1980s, which was totally acceptable Saturday night viewing in the UK. So,
I mean,
it's not right by any means, but back then it was acceptable. So, I don't know. It's a difficult one.
Yeah. It's that sort of line, isn't it? I mean, you should always look at a movie with the eyes of the time rival and the eyes of now, because there's so many people who watch, like, I don't know, a silent movie and they say, oh, it's so old-fashioned, it's boring, nobody talks. But if you look at it with the eyes of the time, it's revolutionary.
Yeah.
The same here. I mean, at the eyes of the time, I mean, imagine this was very, very funny, but with 2023 eyes, it's skin crawling.
Oh yeah, you watch it now and you do feel like just speeding that bit up, but we'll just not watch this bit. It's okay.
I mean, but even the 90s allowed for it as well. Like, I remember getting certain characters that you would send away with through Jars of Marmalade, and you would get toys and fridge magnets through, I can't remember the exact name of the company. You had Little Britain still doing it in the late 90s, early noughts. I don't know when Baddiel done his infamous
he
thing.
Dragged over the coals to what he did, didn't he?
And then you're seeing the generation kind of after us now looking at like Tropic Thunder.
Yeah, that's true.
And Tropic Thunder, and I turn around and say, no, but he's doing that because he's meant to be so ridiculous and so stupid for what he's doing. But the generation below us are going, no, that's just racist. And you go,
but it's like a dual-layered gag there, isn't it? Because he takes it all off and he's doing an Australian accent.
Aye, but it's like it's a different level of looking at things through a different scope, I think. But it is still really bad to see with an accent.
Yeah. It's back to that thing of, you know, Amazon is starting to put before a lot of their TV shows and films that are of that age a little disclaimer at the start to say, you know, this is a film of this particular time. It may contain scenes that are now classed as offensive. Is that the best way of dealing with this? It's, you know, at the time this was okay. Now it seems offensive, so watch it at your peril, sort of thing. Or do you cut elements out of the film to make it so it's acceptable? Because if you cut that scene completely, none of it makes sense even at all. You've got the plan's gone completely, and you've got something that just ends abruptly, or suddenly they're rich for no good reason.
Yeah. And I think, and as you're saying, like Disney do that as well, don't they? They'll be like, I mean, they don't show Song of the South at all, rightfully. And things like Dumbo, I think Dumbo's probably one of their worst. For
the Crows. Yeah.
The Crows, and then the start, they've got like the people working in the circus, when it's like faceless black guys are working, singing about how they can't read or write.
What's the other one? It's the one with the cats. The Disney movie with the cats. I can't remember the name of it.
Lady and the Tramp.
No, not that one. I mean that Aristocats and Lady and the Tramp both have really, really bad sort of Chinese sort of racist jabs.
They're quite later on, like they're not even like 30s, 40s Disney, where you can maybe say that it's the Siamese cats and Lady and the Tramp. Apart from the fact that horribly racist, they're also evil as well. Like, it's just double barreled. Disney just going fucking full barreled for, if we're going to get pulled up, we might as well just pulled up for everything. But yeah, it's difficult to see. I think my issue with it was that I thought the film was okay, and that it's hard to then overlook the ending because good as well, which is maybe the wrong way to look at it, where I'd maybe say, all right, that part's The ending's really, really bad through a kind of 2023 lens, but I can see the value in the rest of them.
Yeah. I mean, to go back to what you were saying about Animal House earlier, you don't want to watch it back again because you think maybe if I watch it now, it's dated pretty badly.
Yeah.
I used to absolutely love this movie. Trading Places was one of my favourite comedy movies when I watched it when I was much younger. This is the first time I've watched it, and it's at least 10 years. And to see that at the end, it's kind of like if you've not seen like an old friend you used to have, and then you find out that they've joined the BNP or something. It's a bit shocking, really, as far as an ending, because if you remove that, I don't think there's so many ways they could have played a joke like that, and it'd be timeless.
Yeah.
But having someone in blackface is always the wrong decision. Because the plan itself, it makes sense, you know. I mean, even if it does end up with sort of casual gorilla rape, which is a choice, I guess.
Yeah.
He has a thing about men in gorilla costumes. John Landis, it's been a theme throughout his career.
Schlock was the first one, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess he just likes gorilla costumes.
Why not?
But it's not aged well. It has its moments, I think, but it's the problem with any sort of era looking back in comedy, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Outside of sort of like silent comedy where it's sort of like pratfalls and you know, slapstick. But yeah, I mean, there's a movie from the 1960s where Peter Sellers dresses up as an Indian man and puts on the Indian accent called The Party. Yeah. Which it was just throughout like sort of like modern history, these sort of racially poor decisions. What was the name? Mickey Rooney, is it? He was famous for it. Sort of the classic Hollywood Chinese stereotype of straw hat and buck teeth.
Oh yeah.
Was it Mickey Rooney? Am I getting the right name there? I think so.
It is, yeah.
It's just it was a problem for a long time in Hollywood. So you could say, yes, this is bad, it doesn't need it. But at the same time, it was so endemic.
Yeah.
That I think Hollywood completely is just in the wrong there.
Yeah, it's almost part of the Western culture at that point.
Yeah. So we're not like pointing fingers too heavily at Trading Places.
No.
It's just sort of the general, really ugly sort of way to do that sort of thing.
I suppose the only thing that you can even say in its defence is that Eddie Murphy was fully aware that the blackface scene was going to happen, and he was fine with it, and is still fine with it to this day. And apparently, him and Dan Aykroyd are great friends, and still are, you know, now in the 2020s. So, you know, as a black man in that film saying, "Yeah, that's okay, you can do that." Have they got some sort of vindication? I don't know. That's not my decision to make as a privileged white male, you know. But there's got to be something in that's happened.
It's slippy, isn't
it?
It's complicated. It's not there's no simple answer to that, really. But we sort of fixated on this a little bit. Is there anything else about Trading Places that you'd like to talk about before we move on to John Landis as a whole?
I just wasn't a massive fan. This is my first time watching it. I'm going to stick with my Animal House argument. Like, I've not watched in ages. I need to go and rewatch it now. But I just wasn't huge on it at all. Like, it's the kind of thing that you're saying, Rob, with the comedy aspect of his comedies. That, again, it's watching this a 40-year-old movie. It could be just the comedy for me doesn't land, and I didn't find any particular aspect of it hugely funny.
It's more fun and fun and funny, I think.
Right.
I mean, it was classed as being a comedy vehicle, I suppose, to try and make Eddie Murphy get into a comedy film. But you know, it's not the funniest film around. I don't think, if I'm just looking at the writer of it, you know, the writer of it wasn't a well-known writer. They didn't do films. This was only their second film they'd ever written. And since then, you know, if you look at their filmography after this, it's like Brewster's Millions, which again was based on a film from way back. My Stepmother's an Alien, Twins, Kindergarten Cop. They got a bit better with their comedy, but they're not classics that they've ever made. The writing in it is not good. And I think if the writing is not good, you can never get a good comedy film from it. And if your comedy writer is not someone who's good at comedy writing, you're stuck. You can't rely on a persona like Eddie Murphy or Dan Aykroyd to sell a film as funny if they haven't got the lines, because both of them need the lines.
Well, that's just Eddie Murphy's career that you've summed up perfectly, isn't it? When the script is right, he was electric. Absolutely. But wow, he's in a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah. A lot of bad stuff.
Yeah. I mean, his career was saved with Dolomite Is My Name, really, wasn't it? And then he immediately pissed it down the sink again. Some bad movies.
Was he not in like Tower Heist or something? Or
yeah. He was in Coming to America too, and that thing on Netflix with Jonah Hill about marrying a black woman. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, I can't think what it's called either.
You sort of skip it whenever it sort of lands on it on the sort of the bar. Because Jonah Hill. No, thank you.
I mean, Eddie Murphy's big career was with things like Beverly Hills Cop. That's what made him famous.
He was electric.
That was where it worked well. But maybe that's because he's actually better as a serious actor. Because a lot of Beverly Hills Cop is him being serious. I like 48 Hours. He's quite serious in that as well. It has elements of gags in it, but it's the serious side that actually is the best bit of the film. There you go.
Like Dolomite, he has a humility there. It's not just a mugging the camera and farcical. There's a levity to it.
The You People is what you're thinking of, I think.
That's the one. Yeah,
it's out this year, apparently. There you go. I've just seen Tower Heist was 2011, so that was before Dolomite. So for some reason, I thought that was like the past 5 years. There you go.
It wasn't great.
Eddie Murphy's best role, clearly Donkey.
Well, it kept his career alive for a long time.
Did.
Shrek 5 next year, that'll be the next one for him.
Are they doing another one?
Yeah, got announced a couple of days ago.
Oh. They set it up pretty heavily in the latest Puss in Boots.
Right, okay.
That's meant to be great, and I've never seen that stuff.
Which completely, it's kind of derailing off topic here, but yeah, the new Puss in Boots is pretty
I've
good.
not seen it, so my kids are a bit older, so they're kind of like they're not into it.
One of the characters is the living embodiment of death, so I think you can sort of...
That's always good.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's a bit more mature, and he goes through a midlife crisis, so yeah.
It looks like it looks animation style similar to Spider-Verse.
Yeah. So let's just wrap a bow on this one with this one question. I think it's fair to say that John Landis' career is over. Not through choice, maybe, just that's the way his career sort of finished out. If you were to sum his legacy up as a director, what would you say it is?
Werewolf.
Just that one movie.
See you next Wednesday. Because obviously it's there in every single film. By the way, in this one, Trading Places, we didn't mention it. It's a movie poster in Jamie Lee Curtis's flat. There you go. That's where you'll find See You Next Wednesday in this one. I had to mention it. I mentioned it through the last episode. Just got to mention it again.
Of course.
I mean, I probably agree with Gav. Yeah, it probably would be Werewolf. I mean, again, looking through his filmography, the last movie he directed was 2010, Burke and Hare, which I've never seen. I like Simon Pegg, but I've not heard good things about it. And then you're talking, he's barely done much. Like nothing that you would certainly say would be on that level.
No, I mean, it's his early career is where he really hit it. There's some brilliant films in his early career where he was getting big box office. It's the likes of, Blues Brothers, Spies Like Us, and Three Amigos, Trading Places as well. He did Beverly Hills Cop 3, bizarrely. But, they were the big moments in his career. And I don't think he's ever got back to them. As you say, if you look at his recent filmography, Burke and Hare, by the way, is quite good. It's worthwhile watching.
Right.
Okay. But, Blues Brothers 2000, which a sequel to a brilliant film, is absolutely trosh.
Yeah. So I was just having a look there thinking, like, is his last, what you would say maybe his last great movie, is it Coming to America in 1988? Because after that, you're looking at something called Oscar, with Sylvester Stallone, Innocent Blood.
That's fair,
yeah.
Beverly Hills Cop 3, Blues Brothers 2000, a lot of music videos, TV. Like, you're looking at 30, 35 years since he's been really prime. And I mean, even for, like, you can talk about people like Carpenter and Craven for having a strong run, maybe in the 80s into I think with Wes Craven, maybe even in the 90s. But they've kind of picked up at some point after there, but it doesn't seem what Landis did.
No.
He's very, very hit and miss.
He's never really come back to it. You're probably right that Coming to America is probably that last big film, because by Beverly Hills Cop 3, we're on the Law of Diminishing Returns anyway. It's not the greatest of the trilogy. He's got some great films in his back catalogue. If you look at his back catalogue, and there's some problematic areas, as we've discussed. But I don't think he can come back and do anything else now, because what was his last actual film he directed?
Was that Burke and Hare?
It probably is Burke and Hare, isn't it? Which is 2010. It's been 13 years since he did anything, really.
Yeah. He's on that sort of Joe Dante era of his career where he just sort of pops up as a talking head in sort of documentaries.
Yeah.
He's a producer for his son.
Yeah.
The directing things he's done with that, because I mean, you're looking at, even after that, something called Franklin and Bash, he directed 1 episode, and then something called Superhero Kindergarten, he's directed 26 episodes, which is some animation TV show.
Superhero Kindergarten. That sounds like just a classic bit of television, doesn't it? Straight up.
26 episodes. He's got a big stake if he's directing that many episodes.
26 out of 27. So I wonder why did he do that other one. It's got Arnie in it as Arnold Armstrong.
It is. I've just had a look. It's a sequel to Kindergarten Cop, basically. Except it's taken it to the next level and made him a superhero now, not just a cop.
Oh, no.
But it's an animated sequel, effectively, to Kindergarten Cop. There you go. That sounds great, doesn't it?
Stan Lee's.
And Stan Lee's name is at the start, which makes it even better.
I mean, how much input does poor Stan Lee have into that? He's been dead 3 years by the time that came out.
Yeah. He can't have had much to do with it, can he?
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a bummer of an ending, isn't it?
Sorry.
Boo! So I think that's about us for this. It's a double episode on John Landis. Coming up next, it's a huge change of pace. It's Shinya Tsukamoto, best known for Tetsuo the Iron Man. So I've not seen that yet. I'm not looking forward to watching it, I'll be honest.
I've heard of it, but that's about it.
I've heard of it as well, but never seen it.
Here's the thing that'll
put Downey Jr. in it.
Oh, no. Here's a thing that'll put off any sort of potentially bashful watchers. I saw it as a kid, and the reason I haven't seen it since is because it's got a drill penis bit in it.
As in a penis gets drilled?
No, a penis is a drill.
But
I don't know what to say about that.
Don't we have a reference for that to kind of...
He turns into a metallic man, and his penis becomes a drill, and he has relations with a woman. So there we go.
What are we talking? Like a hefty drill bit, or are we?
It's a hasty one. I haven't watched it back again, Andy.
Is it a hefty drill bit?
I haven't got like a Black & Decker, magazine to hand.
Is it a masonry drill? Is it a wood drill? What type of drill is it?
Well, now you know, for future reference, and when you're recording that episode, you just get onto, what is it called? Tool station. Then you can compare it, see if the guy's well endowed in terms of drill.
Take a picture down to B&Q with you and just go, what type of drill's this?
Well, that'd be an eventful chat, wouldn't it?
I think you may get arrested.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, showing up. Well, I mean, I'm thinking of a lady tonight, and I wanted this drill bit. Fuck you. Out my shop.
And on that, let's call an end to John Landis on Directors Uncut. Gav, where can we find your stuff?
You can find me at the My Favourite Film podcast. Just go to www.myfavoritefilm.com and all of my links and stuff are all there.
Excellent. And Andy?
Find me on Road to Nowhere podcast at Where Is Nowhere on Twitter and on Instagram. That's it.
Check out those places and check out those pods. They're both very, very good. And we'll see you next time with all those drill bits and me desperately trying not to think about it. See you next time.